Hey guys, what's going on? In this match breakdown of the draft, we're going to be breaking down GENG versus BLG. So basically the GOATs of Korea coming in versus one of the GOATs of China heading off pretty much. It's an Asian battle. What I wanted to focus on in this draft is basically the evolution of it and how each draft basically tests the playstyles of both of these teams. And it's basically rewarding the team that had the most adaptations and was able to shift the draft each time in order to take advantage of the opponent. What you're going to be paying attention to is the evolution of the draft, and that's going to be my focus in this series versus just breaking it all down raw, because there's just so many games, right? We could go into semantics all day about it, but in order to maintain the concise nature of a video, in order to kind of reconcile this, we're going to break down the evolution of it. So starting with game one, I just want you guys to get a quick understanding of a baseline for what the draft was, right? Because it was by far the most boring draft. This set the tone. This also had the most preparation going in. So things to note here is that GENG most likely intentionally let Kalista Renata through. Most teams are going to ban it or have some level of priority against it, because it seems that a lot of teams just cannot deal with the pressure and priority that Kalista provides. And because of this, they gave BLG a decent advantage, right? So Jax B1 was the response in preparation for it, which is interesting, but definitely something that they planned for. I'm not sure what the thought process was, but it could be because they believed in Doran being able to just win in isolation and really have a priority on it, and also maybe to prevent it from bin. But the main thing here is to note that both teams are very boring in the sense that they're just front to back meatball comps, right? And it just comes down to who does it better and who is able to get a proper lead in the early game. And that's essentially how the game played out, right? BLG, with the pressure they had on bottom side with the Kalista Renata, they were able to get basically every objective they wanted, and then they're just stable on the other lanes and managed to scale through. It's not like GENG scaling is bad, it's just that BLG's comp probably has more rounded tools to kind of transition to this early mid, and a lot of times this supersedes the potential outscale that another team would have. And that's how basically game one went. In game two, this changed a little bit. Clearly, GENG did not think that worked. So they switched sides, and they literally switched sides as well on the map, but they also switched up sides in terms of their drafting. So this time, BLG went for a pretty similar ban setup. I believe they also banned Rakan and Poppy in the first game. But what their idea here was with this is that they enabled the J4B1, which is basically what a lot of teams are defaulting to now, not because it's good, but because it's decent in most situations, and it prevents BLG from showing the rest of their cards. That is the main thing that you're looking for here, right? Counter picks and the like are very important in this meta, and there's actually a lot of different champs that are pretty good right now in terms of different styles. I would say almost every style except for like super weird split push comps are very viable in this current meta, and with interesting priorities on certain champions like Aphelios here, right? The AD meta has been evolving. Aphelios has basically risen with the exception of T1 as the blind AD carry of choice because he has a decent matchup spread, and teams like that front to back scaling. And it's changed a lot ever since the Xayah Kai'Sa priority, and just teams are just all over the place with what they're going for. This time, the strategy lies a little bit weirdly on GENG again. They're not being the main thing I'm missing here is that they're not proactive in their draft, right? They somehow gave BLG both Orianna and Rumble, which means they just automatically have decent lanes in mid and top. Like top is hard winning, mid is already stable, and it's just a really good combo with the drive-in. So it's really weird that they decided to not really answer it. Xayah Renata is the response to their bottom lane as well, and honestly leaving support for R5 in a meta where Renata is good is pretty decent, because Renata has a great spread into engage champions, but GENG can just opt to not play engage. So that flexibility there is what's going to be key. So from a draft perspective, it's not as bad for GENG. It's just that their blind AD carry didn't really achieve much, let's say that, because the point of it is to hold for picks that can do more against what picks that BLG do reveal, but they ended up just picking Azir on 4 anyway, which is not that impressive. And the Milio on 5 is decent, but realistically, they could have given themselves more opportunity to flex around. And that's not what happened here. So, again, similar thing. It's just a lot of pressure on the entire map for BLG, enabling them to just do whatever they want. And, again, ignore the scaling that GenG has. The point of scaling is that you don't want to just obnoxiously turbo giga scale. It's more so like you want to outscale the opponent just enough. As long as you're outscaling them, that is the most important thing. Then you can dial down the outscaling so that you can, and tone up your early game so that you can prevent that from getting out of control, right? And that is what you're looking for here. So twice in a row, BOG have decent drafts. Winning lanes pretty much, mid is even, but winning lanes on like everywhere else in terms of the early to mid. And BLG are clearly, with the way the game pace is, BLG is happy with that because they just are really good at these early game movements and forcing things and advantages that way. So game 3, GenG clearly has some issues. They switch sides again, and then they go blue this time once more. So they ban Xayah, Renata, and Jax. They think Jax is still good. Orianna is still left open. Keep in mind here. They B1 Maokai. B1ing jungle is fine. So BLG take J4 in Orianna, the 1-2, and they go for a different direction here. Aatrox, Yone. While this is fine, and I appreciate the fact that they go for a different direction than allowing Chovy to just play Azir and do nothing against Yagao. The only downside with this is that now they're picking a champion that kind of is a little bit awkward in terms of revealing your composition, right? Obviously, I'm aware of the game result that they ended up actually winning this game, but from a draft perspective, as you see the rest of it, I don't really think that was indicative of GenG's victory here. It was probably to just squeeze it out due to gameplay. The reason for this is because BLG invests the rest of their draft resources in 4-5 to actually turbo stomp GenG and prevent them from engaging. Quote unquote turbo stomp. It's not enough, clearly, because they're obligated to pick AD on 4, wanting to save support for 5, so they pick Caitlyn in this case, which is an okay blind, considering how many ADs are banned. I think I count 5. And the Braum is actually a great response into this entire composition. So, BOG actually did a good job drafting here, per se, because they pick generic things that are just high priority, like the Jarvan Orianna, to push their important picks back, and then give a chance to pivot at the right moments. Caitlyn on 4, Braum on 5 in response to Kai'Sa not. So really strong here in order to just establish a win con of just playing front to back and doing your thing, right? The only thing would be that out of all the AD carries remaining, it's probably awkward that it was Caitlyn. They probably just felt like they needed pressure on bottom side for whatever reason. And although that's not a bad thing, there were probably some other decent ones that they could have blinded. Even, like, I think Ashe would have been good here, even though I think it's still underrated. Sivir would have been okay, although a little bit more awkward. Even Jinx in this situation. Was Aphelios open? No, but like, you get my gist. I'm not sure if the insane lane priority was required just because they already have Renekton and Orianna. But the other aspect of this would be questioning the Renekton pick in the first place, because it's not a great, despite what people believe, it's not as great of a matchup into Aatrox as people think, because Aatrox can really neutralize it well. But I digress. The main point of the draft is there. GenG revealed really early what they wanted to do, and BLG adjusts, and on paper, and except for like I'd say like a couple of small adjustments, BLG do have this draft in the bag. Right? You can kind of see like the glimpse of brilliance that it comes with, although it's like a simple draft. Simple can be good, right? It's very easy to pilot. They can do their thing and just do it well. Renata also would have been very good here, but you know, it was banned, so Braum basically does a similar job in terms of the champion identity. So I would say the main issue was just the champions they picked a little bit. Game 4, let's touch on this one real quick. Spoiler, my fault. We jumped into the draft pretty quickly here. It seems like the Yone kit caused them some problems, even though they had the right idea. So because of that, if they try the same thing, they might believe the same thing will happen. So they just opt to get rid of it, and they adjust from the Poppy ban. It looks like they don't even care about Poppy, so that's something to keep in mind. GENG get Rumble this time, which is actually pretty good, and they pick Vi into BLG. So although it's not the greatest to, let's say, raw dog the Vi in the early phases, the point of this could be to discourage champions that are inherently weak to Vi and force BLG to more think about champions that can answer this a little bit more. It's not because it's almost like they're asking to get countered, right? In this case, they follow a similar strategy, and Chovy goes for more aggressive picks again. So at this point, they're thinking like, hey, we're going to, we kind of get what they're going for here at this point, so we can just upfront what we're trying to stop it with. And in this case, the pick is Senna Ashe, which I think is actually pretty decent because it is a front-to-back AD with 20,000 ADs banned once again. Does great into the Kalista. And gets a really good matchup started. My only gripe with this, and it's not the biggest one, but picking a champion like Ashe into Vi puts a lot of pressure onto TK to perform. And it makes the pairing, although it makes it a rare but effectively awkward pairing for Ashe. But at this point, I'm not really, if they seem to have really needed prio at this stage because they don't really have it in anywhere else. So although there are other good picks, like things like Sivir come to mind, maybe, let me check the game, maybe Neela even, but it would be awkward to Kalista. You know, you have to think about what options are there really. And at this point, there weren't too many. So you kind of have to think that they have to get a little bit creative or adjust their draft so that they have more room to get more pressure on top side of the map. You know, that's the mentality you should be going in with as if you're drafting in a series like this. Oh, how do I adjust for each of these games? What was the issue in this specific game that we change and then we can change so that we can get an advantage in the next series and the enemy can't see it coming. Right? Now we go on to Silver Scrapes, game 5, and one more adjustment from BLG pretty much sealed the deal in this one. This is probably the most unwinnable draft for GENG out of the entire series, so it's a really sad game to go out on. But if you look here, BLG switch one more time. They ban out Aatrox because I believe Doran has been playing it almost every single game. And the bans are pretty stable at this point. Now we have Rumble B1, and now we have a Raw Dog Vi from GENG because they liked that same dynamic. It seemed that BLG had a little bit of a weakness with dealing with Vi last game. So they're like, okay, it's working. They get Jarvan Orianna. This is like the Thanos 3 right here. So it's a little awkward. I think this could have been pushed back a bit because BLG is not going to take it. But they're just so obsessed with playing this forward style because stylistically they're just like, okay, this is the only thing that works, so we go for it. And they're just full forward at this point. Like, they don't give a damn anymore. And this is not allowed at this point. You know, you can pick a similar defensive style, except this case it's a little bit less defensive just due to BLG focusing on priority picks that are given to them. And they swap the Ashe for a Senna, which is great because I would say this is the OG version of the Tomathan Kench combo. And this not only provides the strongest lane presence against something like Kai'Sa, but has more innate sustainability, quote unquote, versus something like Vi, right? Senna has the Shroud in order to prevent the Vi ult. She has an innate heal burst. She has a little bit more range to deal with. So just slight tools that adjust the way the things flow that allow them to not be able to do anything. I've seen the Senna Tom versus Kai'Sa Rail matchup so many times, it is completely unplayable for them. And it's just a matter of 3 winning lanes and a jungler that's able to have the available resources to be at the right place at the right time, and it's just a wrap, right? Look, the Nara pick, although it could be something like Doran was cooking, it doesn't really do much against these champions. Chovy is working his magic somehow up on CS against Orianna, but these are like nickel and dime sort of advantages in a whole world where BLG can just kind of force their way through objectives at any time. They can get any drag they want early because the Senaton matchup is disgusting. If Shun just wants to go top for whatever reason, this guy, he has a Rumble bot, the Grand Logon looking thing that does like 10,000 damage in the early game. There's so many ways to play through, and like by far, it was really hard for GENG to do anything here, and it's really a bit unfortunate. But these slight adjustments every draft are what you're looking for. And this, I believe this series was a really good example of that and how BLG managed to come out top in spite of almost getting reverse swept. So really good matchup here to look at. I recommend you go through the games yourselves if you're interested, and you can ask me any questions. Thanks, guys.